What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Godspeed ZRZ. Now, as you can see behind me, we've got the new wheels and tires in, 38-15-50 Mickey Thompson Baja Boss, as well as the 20x12 -44 offset XD onslaughts. And these are with the bronze accents to complement the Rubicon 392. Now, as many of you know, the Rubicon 392 does come with a little lift over top of the factory Rubicon, and with that, hopefully they will clear. With that being said, there are a few things we're gonna have to cut off anyway. Hopefully we'll be able to run the full fenders. If not, we'll go ahead and cut them down. We will try to run them on the full stock fenders. I'd love to see how that looks. It's gonna look very, very tight, but if we need to, we definitely will go ahead and cut down those two-piece fenders to get that extra clearance. But that's enough talking for now. Let's go ahead and take these rock sliders off. We'll probably go ahead and pull the Jeep out here, and then we'll get started on this thing. Against my better judgment, I honestly just want to see, in the name of science, before we do any cutting, before I take off the rock sliders, or before I even cut them down, I just want to see if these things are even going to fit like this. I think it would look cool if they did. I know they're not going to, but we can always take the rock sliders off after we put these on. No big deal, it's not going to be in the way, and we'll be able to get in the same way with the fenders if we do need to take them down. No big deal at all. I just want to see if they'll fit, so let's do it. Now, for the factory lug nuts, you want to use the 7/8 socket, and you should be good to go. These 35s are a lot easier to move than the 38s. So, as we all know, these tires are asymmetric, which just means it's going to be a mirror image of the actual tire on each side, which always kind of bothers me, but it always gets me confused whenever I'm mounting them. But we're gonna go ahead and slap them on, make sure everything looks good, and we'll go from there. So for these specific wheels, I actually ended up using a 19mm with a thinner wall for the socket, just so it doesn't damage these wheels. So as you guys can hopefully see here, that's with the 38, there's the 35 on the back, and I'll show you what it looks like from the front, because that's where we'll get the real difference with these 1550s. So there we've got our 38-1550 mounted up, and actually height-wise it clears fairly well. Obviously with the -44 offset, it pushes the tire away quite a bit, that way we're not really getting close to anything on the inside. Now at full lock, the outside of the tire may hit the front bumper. We'll see how it goes. But there's the 35 right there, and that's the 38. And you'll always want to be sure, once you do take these off, you're always going to have a little bit of metal shavings, especially if you've used an impact to tighten the lug nuts on. So you want to blow those off, wipe them off, make sure there's no shards of metal in there before you do put on the new lug nuts. Just something to keep in mind. And you will want to try to jack it up as close to height as what the 38 is going to be, because I promise the weight of this tire and wheel setup is just way too heavy to try to lift up. I did do it on this side, but I had to sandwich it in between my feet, and it just makes it miserable. These things are heavy. Now that the fronts are on, hopefully this gives you guys a good idea, and I want to give you a little bit more of an in-depth look at these wheels and the tires themselves. Like I said, these are the Mickey Thompson MT Baja Boss, but like I've said before, whenever we installed the last ones, these are asymmetric. It's still an issue I really don't like, but I like the tire. They perform very well, they ride really good, and they are super aggressive. It's definitely something different, and you can see with the -44 offset, they are very, very deep. So they go in quite a bit, and then with that center cap, it should button it all up and look really good. Now for the width of these tires compared to, you know, the standard 1250, which these are actually just the 315/70 R17, so they're a little bit smaller than the 35 1250s, off by maybe a ½ inch on all metrics. But you can see right here, that is a massive, massive difference on stance with the 35 versus the 38-1550. And I think it just looks killer compared to these little tiny 35s. Definitely what the Jeep needed. And you can see here with the 35s, it barely stuck out. You can see the top here just barely stuck out past the fender. But for the 38s, and these are fully mounted, I mean, they're out all the way. So it definitely looks quite a bit better. We're definitely gonna have to take off the rock sliders and cut them down, I know that much. But I would like to see where it's gonna hit on the fenders. It's looking like it's gonna grab on the front fenders pretty aggressively, and it should miss the front bumper from what I'm seeing now, but we'll definitely have to find out here in just a minute. And I just wanted to give you guys a size reference here. So I'm about 6'2". Well, I am 6'2", but these are the 38s here, and you can tell how wide they are. They go from there to there, which is pretty wide. And then for the 35s, not a huge height difference, but really where you get that increase in size is just gonna be the width from the two. This one, you know, is only from the end of your fingers to about midway up my forearm, where this one's almost to my elbow from the tip of my fingers. So quite a bit of a difference here. And here's a side reference for the back. That way you guys can see, of course, we got the 35 on the left side, and we've got the 38 over here. Just a massive, massive difference, guys. Hopefully the camera can portray the difference in size. In all honesty, they are, I mean, they're not massive, they're not 40s, but 38 1550s are plenty big enough for any stock vehicle. And for clearance, in terms of what we're running into so far, you've got this back side right here, and we're probably going to go ahead and take this out. Of course, you've got just a little metal support bracket behind that, and we can trim that down too. And it's not going to get necessarily any closer to the rock slider in the rear. Whenever it does articulate, it's actually going to go out at an angle. It's the way the control arms are made, basically to go around that point more than anything. It's just the way the articulation works. And for the front here, it doesn't look like we're going to hit anything on the front, in the very, very front in terms of turning. I think we should clear the bumper even at full tilt. We might run into a few issues whenever we max out the articulation up here. And then for the rock slider in the back, the way it sticks out so far, we definitely will have to trim that down right there. And I think we're going to eat into this whenever we turn. But the proof's in the pudding, guys. These Rubicon 392s, the way they're set up, you can clear some pretty massive tires just from the factory. Definitely changed the look on it. But we still got to wrap up this one last side, and then we'll throw everything else together, button it up, and we'll try to take it down the road and see what all hits. All right, guys, so they are fully bolted up. I don't have the center caps on yet. I think the best thing to do for now would be to take it for a little test run and see what all is going to hit. That way we have a good idea of what we do need to take off, and see if it would be easier to have the wheels and tires off for any of the trimming we need to do. For what I see happening, I think I can just get rid of the rock sliders, cut them down for now, throw them back on, and we should be good to go. Well, I believe we'll run into some mild rubbing on the front fenders. I don't think we'll hit on the front bumper. We will find out here shortly. But as you guys can see, the stance of this thing is just completely different now. Way more aggressive. The new wheels look really good. Now, I haven't seen these wheels on any other vehicle yet, but I'm sure as soon as I have these on, you know how it is, they'll pop up everywhere. But the stance looks good from all four corners. It's really hard to beat. One thing to keep in mind, guys, once you do get new tires, please take the stickers off. There's no point in leaving that on. It just looks goofy. Take your stickers off before you drive. They heat up, and then you can't even pull them off. It looks dumb. Made in the USA, baby. Now, I honestly don't remember if the TPMS sensors will learn themselves after we drive for just a little bit, or if we will need to take them to the dealer to get them reprogrammed. Regardless, I'll stop by the dealership and let them reflash the Jeep. That way, on the factory build sheet and everything on the spec list, it will show 38s, and they'll recalibrate the speedometer. I don't have any special tunes for this thing right now, so I don't have a way to recalibrate it, and I really wanted to wait to get any tune for it till after we do the big stuff, like the power modifications coming later. But for now, I just want to see how everything's going to ride, and everything is tightened up good enough. I'm gonna drive around the neighborhood, let everything settle just a little bit and see where it's going to rub. And whenever we come back, we'll address whatever we need to. Still sounds really good. And one thing I have failed to mention is even if these don't fit, we do have some really good options to keep the stock suspension. I have been in talks with Fab 4s, and as many of you know, they make some of the best armor you can possibly get in the industry for these vehicles. So if we can work something out, I'll probably end up running the front and rear fenders from them, and we'll get the most wide open fenders you can get. Probably the mid, I think they have the mid width, and they don't stick out too far, so we'll still get that aggressive stance, but they give you quite a bit more clearance. Same thing in the rear. So that's definitely an option, but for now, let's see what's gonna rub. And this will be our first tight turn. I'm gonna cut it pretty deep so we can see if it's gonna rub. It didn't rub. That's weird. Make another tight turn here, a little bit of an incline. Tight as I can, actually. Oh, I hear the rock slider. So I probably had 1/8 of a turn left and rubbing on the rock slider, but it didn't sound like it was hitting the plastic on the fender. So that's a good sign so far. It seems like what we're going to be able to test, at least on the road, is basically just the failure point we're going to run into is the rock sliders. Now I'm going to make just normal turns here for a couple little turns and see if it does rub anything. You should have seen those people's faces. It does feel cool. The ride height itself doesn't really feel much different from the 35s to the 38s. The steering geometry itself, it's kind of holding straight. I'm not really on a good road to test if it's going to hold straight. So at a stop sign, making a 90-degree turn. No issues whatsoever. So that really leads me to believe at this point that it would be fine on normal driving conditions, even with the rock sliders, which is kind of crazy. But I don't like to have any of that rubbing, so I'm going to go ahead and mark those up and we'll take them off, and I'll have to cut them down. I might not cut them down today. I might leave it with no rock sliders for a little bit. In a past Rubicon I did with 38 1550s, before we were in the 40s on it, or the 40 1550s on it, I cut down the rock sliders on it as well. Now keep in mind it had a 3.25 inch Skyjacker lift kit, and I actually rotated the rear axle, so it would have been closer to about a 3-inch lift kit over the factory Rubicon. This one's technically about 2 inches over, so not really running into any issues yet. And I ended up running 40 1550s with the 3-inch lift but I did have flat fenders on at the time. Now the flat fenders I had on, I don't believe they gave me any more clearance except for the back side of the front of the fender flare. In terms of the clearance on the top, it didn't really feel like it gave me any more clearance, but on the back side it did give me a little bit more. Another 90-degree turn here. And I can see it kind of working on the inside of that fender well, but you don't feel anything until you really do hit that rock slider. So next step, we'll take off the rock sliders, and then we'll be able to test and see where it's really going to rub on the actual fender, the inner fender well. It's not hitting on the fender, just the inner fender well itself. And in the past, I have been able to tuck those back, whether it's zip ties or just heat it up and mold it a little bit differently. And we definitely need to back into this. Let's see, backing up. Yeah, backing up, we're running into the rock slider as well. Really, any situation until you get to full lock, you don't feel anything at all. So it's actually reading everything at 36 in the rear, 36 front left, 35 front right. And I actually was only running 32 pounds of pressure in those. So I guess it's already picked up and learned those TPMS sensors just from that short, 1 mile drive. Pretty good. And as of right now, we're at 10,003 miles. So I did stick to my word, 10,000 miles. We started doing some crazy stuff. So I just went around one more time to torque all the lug nuts down. They're all tight now, and I wanted to show you where it's hitting. So for the rock slider itself, you can see the damage right there, just from the first little drive. And of course, on the actual inner fender well liner itself, we've got already some slight cuts, and I'm sure it'll grab right here. Now, one of the issues you run into is that support bracket down there for the fender flare. And I've actually been able to take that out before and tie everything back just a couple, actually just a couple inches, and it seems to fare quite a bit better. For the rock slider itself, what I was going to show you is typically where I cut it is just to match the body line right here. And with that, it gives you a couple extra inches of clearance, which definitely helps on the road. And for this one, I'm probably going to chop it just a little bit more. That way, if we need to, we can cut the body itself. But I'm going to go ahead and mark those off and take them off. And these are the center caps. So for the center caps from XD, they actually give you the option of putting the red star in there as well, which we're not going to do that on this one, but it is cool they give you the option for it. But I'm going to go ahead and put these on, and we'll go ahead and take the rock sliders off as well. Be sure whenever you're putting these on, don't lose track of which bolt you're actually on and start tightening up one of these fake ones, because they will break. They're just plastic. I've actually done that before in the past, but just so you guys can learn from my mistakes, don't do it. And you really don't have to tighten these up too awful much. If you just get a normal Allen key and just cinch them down, you'll be perfectly good to go. They aren't going to go anywhere. It's got plenty of thread to hold it on. That's literally about as tight as I'll take them right there. Just a couple fingers tight. All right, guys, so I finally did get the rock sliders off. Of course, that's a pretty easy, straightforward procedure. We've got the center caps in now as well, and this thing looks pretty mean. Now, of course, I'm gonna cut up the rock sliders, that way we can throw them back on, because the Rubicons just don't look right without those factory rock sliders. I have ran some aftermarket ones in the past, but I really just haven't found anything that I like better than the factory ones, believe it or not. But this is just a full and finished look of the Rubicon 392 with those 38 1550s and 20x12 XD rims with -44 offset. Hopefully the machine bronze picks up in the camera. It looks pretty good in person. At some angles, it really does look kind of the same color as the Jeep, and then at other angles, you can really see the bronze accents. So it's pretty neat, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. And here's a good look for you guys at full turn. So it actually just barely bypasses this, as long as there's not much articulation, so on-road should be decent. And then it's just hitting these, it's just hitting the inner fender well. And like I said, we're just gonna take that support brace out and try to tighten all this back, pull it back maybe an inch or two, and we should be good to go. As many of you guys know, I was a little concerned about this thing fitting in the garage, but I had probably another 3 inches. So really and truly, if we want to do a lift kit, a small lift kit, I really could get away with it. But I'm really liking the stance of this with the stock suspension. I really like the stance. Hopefully in the near future, we'll be running some FabTech fenders front and rear, and that will really just change everything up for us, give us a little bit more clearance. I'm sure we'll run into an issue with this little piece right there, so we'll go ahead and address that here shortly, probably put it in another video. So just finishing up a little bit of trimming for this thing. As you guys can see here, I've already got the fenders cut the way I need to make them clear for now. And you can see the cuts right here. All I did was just take an angle from here all the way down. I haven't cleaned them up yet. Rounded it off right there. And in here was that piece that I was showing you guys before. And essentially all I did was take out that main piece that was really causing all the damage right here and used a zip tie to hold it back into the hole of the actual body here. And it's actually working pretty well. And I'll show you guys how it clears here in just a second. But first, I'm gonna go ahead and try to cut these rock sliders down to size. I've already got them marked up, and I'm just gonna cut them and keep trimming them, I guess, until we get it where it looks good. This is actually the night before the install, but I just wanted to show you guys the way these things come packaged from Custom Wheel Offsets. The way they were actually delivered, I had to pay an extra like $40 for them to put them in the garage because I wasn't home. Had to get somebody to sign for them. All right, guys, so after everything's all trimmed up, it's turned out really, really good, but I can't do the rock sliders today. I actually don't have the tool to change the wheel on my angle grinder, so I'm gonna have to get that tool. That way I can put the right cutting wheel on there, and then we'll go ahead and shape those up. But for now, just to let you guys know, I did take this thing for a little test rip, and there's no rubbing, no scrubbing, anything at all, even at full turn. And just to give you guys an idea of what all I had to cut, this a little bit of a rough cut for now, and I'll finish it up later, but it actually looks good, and unless I told somebody, they really wouldn't see it. And then for the inner fender well liner, like I said, I got it tucked all the way back, so you can see the difference there. My whole hand can fit under this pretty easily, and I still got plenty of room, so it's not having any clearance issues at all on the street. Now, of course, whenever we take it riding, it's definitely going to hit something. Now, in the back, it is hitting exactly where I thought it would, but it's only whenever it's a very, 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 very light rub, only whenever you go over a pretty big bump. But it's that piece right here, and you can see how it sticks out back here. And that's really simple to take off. Usually whenever you change out the rear bumpers anyway, that's a piece that just basically disappears. But I'll take that off and the bracket behind it, take it off, no big deal at all. But for now, it's doing really well. So we'll just wait for now until we get the fenders front and rear. And like I said, I think we're really gonna get those Fab Techs. I've been talking to them more today. It's looking pretty good. So if we can get those, especially for pretty good price for free, then they're gonna be on here really, really soon. I think they'll complement the Jeep really well. But for today, guys, that's gonna wrap it up. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about the new setup on the Rubicon 392 and what you wanna see next. But until next time, just take it easy.